Greetings, Generals. Welcome to Gonzo Gamer's Guide to the J&P Mod. This is the second episode in a series discussing career point selections. Army organization was covered previously. This time I will discuss medicine, explain its benefits, and why it might be the best career area to max out as soon as possible. Medicine provides three benefits. It restores a percentage of casualties to a unit immediately after battles. It increases the percentage of men who cycle from the badly wounded to the wounded pool and the wounded to the veteran pool. It also reduces the chance that an officer is wounded or killed. Looking at my player casualties at Gettysburg and a major general campaign, the 1,932 troops that were killed are lost forever. Any captured would also be removed permanently from the Army. Up to 40% of the 1,030 missing troops are instantly returned based on unit command and Army organization points. The first benefit of medicine will instantly restore a percentage of the 6,078 wounded troops immediately back to their units. Each point in medicine is worth 3.3%, totaling 33% with 10 career points. Please note that this is not a blanket restoration applied to all units equally. If a brigade sustains no damage in battle, then medicine will not be applied to that unit. Likewise, units that take the most damage in battle will get the most benefit. The player casualty report lists the cumulative losses for each category: killed, wounded, missing, and captured, but you'll never know the exact breakdown at the unit level. In this example, I know that 6,078 men were wounded. I also know that Carew's 2-star infantry unit started the battle with 2,000 men and had 509 casualties, reducing the unit to 1,491. I do not know the breakdown between those that were killed, wounded, and missing among Carew's 509 casualties. The 509 are Carew's actual losses before wounded and missing troops are instantly restored to the unit. Once you press OK on the battle report, the instant returns will be applied as you return to camp. In camp, Carew has 1,602 men in the unit, so 111 men were instantly returned. I have 10 in medicine, 10 in Army organization, and the unit's command is 102. Therefore, I'm applying a maximum 33% instant return to the wounded personnel and 40% instant return to the missing personnel for Carew's unit. But there's no way for me to know exactly how many were wounded or missing versus killed. We could infer some ranges, but it doesn't really matter. Another way to look at instant unit restore is to say that 111 is just under 22% of the total 509 casualties. Therefore, an investment in maximum medicine, Army organization, and the command level leadership ensures that each unit that fights in battle takes around 22% fewer casualties. The second benefit of medicine is related to the casualty system, so let's briefly revisit that. As units suffer damage, each soldier affected will end up in one of these categories. There's a 15 to 30% chance that they'll be killed, a 5 to 15% chance that they'll end up missing, a 25 to 35% chance of being wounded, and a 20 to 30% chance of being badly wounded. Be aware that casualties to allied units are not added to your veteran or wounded pool, and you get fewer weapons recovery from dead allies than live ones in the mod, so don't intentionally get them killed. By the way, sometimes players will ask if it's a good idea to intentionally have more player casualties, since the casualty system will give them back to you in the veteran pool. These percentages should answer that question. You're losing 15 to 30% of your casualties immediately from kills. Plus, you only get back a percentage of the remaining casualties. So no, don't do that. As of mod version 1.29, after every battle, men in the wounded pool move to the veteran pool for redeployment. Without any points in medicine, this will be 25% of the wounded. Each point in medicine moves an additional 2.2%. Therefore, 10 in medicine will add another 22% onto the base of 25, so 47% of your wounded move to the veteran pool after every battle. 15% of the men in the wounded pool will then die of their wounds. Men only move from the badly wounded pool to the wounded pool after grand battles. The same percentages apply, with 25 being the default and an additional 22% with 10 points in medicine. All remaining badly wounded troops will die of their wounds. This is why the badly wounded pool always says 0 after a grand battle. Here is a comparison to illustrate the effects of medicine. The numbers here are inferred based on actual battle casualties from a past campaign. To make things simple, I will just assume that the pools were empty going into Second Bull Run, even though that will not be the case. Most of the time, there will be at least 2 minor battles between grand battles. The Army has 10 medicine at Second Bull Run. 2,216 men are killed, 6,900 are wounded, and 931 are missing. First, with 10 in medicine, 33% are instantly returned to their units, which is 2,277 men. That leaves another 4,623 remaining. The ratio between wounded and badly wounded is about 7-6 on average. Therefore, we will assume that 2,489 were wounded and 2,134 were badly wounded. Second, a total of 47% of the badly wounded, 25% default plus 22% from 10 in medicine, will move to the wounded pool. That's about 1,003 men, and the rest will die. There are now 3,492 wounded men, the original 2,489 plus the 1,003 that just come up from the badly wounded. 47% of them will move from the wounded pool to the veteran pool for reassignment, which is 1,641 men. Third, 15% of the remaining 1,851 wounded die of their wounds, reducing the wounded pool to 1,573. All 3 of these steps occur as you transition from the battle report to camp. Therefore, in camp, you're going to see 1,641 men in the veteran pool, 1,573 in the wounded pool, and 0 in the badly wounded pool. Since we're only discussing medicine, I will not include the instant restorations for the missing personnel. At Crampton's Gap, the Army had 682 killed, 1,856 wounded, and 325 missing. We apply the same 3 steps. 612 men are instantly restored to their units by medicine. 574 men are added to the badly wounded pool. Since this is a minor battle, nothing happens with them. As far as we know, they're just laying in a hospital bed somewhere. 670 men are added to the wounded pool, making the total 2,243. Because we just added 670 to the 1,573 that were already in there. 47% of the new total are moved to the veteran pool, which is 1,054 men. Then 15% of the remaining 1,189 die, leaving 1,011 wounded in the pool. At South Mountain, the casualties are 1,025 killed, 3,227 wounded, and 446 missing. We apply the 3 steps again, so 1,065 men are instantly restored to their units. 998 men are added to the badly wounded pool. Again, this is a minor battle, so they'll just sit there and wait until after Antietam to decide their fate. 1,164 men are added to the wounded pool, making the total 2,175. 47% of the new total are moved to the veteran pool, which is 1,022 men. 15% of the remaining 1,153 die, leaving 980 wounded in the pool. At Antietam, the casualties are 3,206 killed, 10,120 wounded, and 1,647 missing. We applied the 3 steps one more time. So 3,340 men are instantly restored to their units. 3,129 men are added to the badly wounded pool, making the total 4,701. Since this is a grand battle, 47% of the badly wounded are moved to the wounded pool, which is 2,209 men, and all the rest of them die of their wounds. 6,840 men are now in the wounded pool. 980 were in the pool before Antietam. 2,209 badly wounded recovered enough to move to the wounded pool, and 3,651 is the portion of wounded from Antietam itself. 47% of the new total are moved to the veteran pool, which is 3,215. Then 15% of the remaining 3,625 die, leaving 3,081 in the wounded pool. What if the Army didn't have any points of medicine? Well, there wouldn't be any instant restoration of the wounded after the battles. Rather than 47% of the men moving between the pools, it will now only be 25%, but there'll be more men to move in the pools without the instant restore at the beginning. The number in camp after Second Bull Run would be 0 instant restore. 796 men of the 3,185 badly wounded move to the wounded pool, and all the rest die. 25% of the 4,511 in the wounded pool move to the veteran pool, which is now 1,128. 15% of the remaining 3,383 wounded die, leaving 2,876 in the wounded pool. After Crampton's Gap, again, 0 instant restore. 857 men are added to the badly wounded pool. 999 men are added to the wounded pool, making the total 3,875. 969 men move from the wounded pool into the veteran pool, and then 15% of the wounded pool die, leaving 2,470 remaining. After South Mountain, 0 instant restore. 1,489 men are added to the badly wounded pool, making the total 2,346 men. 1,738 men are added to the wounded pool, making the total 4,208. 1,052 men move from the wounded pool into the veteran pool. 15% of the wounded pool die, leaving 2,683 in the pool. After Antietam, again, 0 instant restore. 4,671 men are added to the badly wounded pool, bringing the total to 7,017. 1,754 men move from the badly wounded pool to the wounded, and the rest of them die. Total wounded are 5,449 plus 1,754 plus 2,683 gives us 9,886. 2,472 men move from the wounded pool to the veteran pool, leaving 7,414 still wounded. 15% of those 7,414 wounded die, leaving 6,302 in the wounded pool. Having 10 in medicine for these 4 battles resulted in 7,294 men were immediately restored. In the default tier with 1,800 men brigades, that's 4 entire infantry brigades worth of veteran experience that's been retained, plus their weapons. 6,932 men are moved to the veteran pool, so they can be reassigned and retain their experience. Again, this is close to 4 infantry brigades worth of veterans. 3,623 badly wounded and 1,083 wounded men died of their wounds, which is 4,706 total. But with no points in medicine, those 4 battles resulted in no troops instantly restored. Only 5,621 men were moved to the veteran pool. 7,652 badly wounded and 2,092 wounded men died of their wounds, which is 9,744 total. Cumulatively, the Army with 10 in medicine receives 7,294 vets returned at no cost and retains another 6,932 vets for reassignment, which amounts to 14,226 experienced men retained. Comparatively, the Army with no medicine retains 5,621 vets for reassignment, but must replace 8,605 men with recruits just to match the other army's raw numbers, plus assign a new weapon to redeploy with all of them. Of course, recruits will always lower the experience of your units. This sample is only 4 battles. There are 21 more battles in the campaign, and the grand battles will continue to escalate in size. When I say that medicine is like compound interest, I'm referring to the difference in how many experienced vets and their weapons are retained over a campaign compared to no or low career points in medicine. Because of this, of all the career point areas, medicine will have the most significant influence on the quality of your troops as you progress through your campaign. If you watch my campaigns on YouTube and wonder why you don't have as many 2- and 3-star units at the same point in the campaign, consider that I usually have medicine at 10 points going in the second bull run. The later you delay in investing in medicine, the fewer quality units you will have later in the campaign, and the more resources that you'll need to replace their lost weapons. The last benefit of medicine is reducing the chance of officers being killed or wounded. With no investment in medicine, the default chance of being wounded is 0.1 or 10%. The chance occurs for every frame that a unit takes at least 1 hit point of damage. 1 hit point in the game is enough damage to remove 1 soldier. If the unit does not take any damage, then there's no check for officer wounding. Keep in mind that weapons have a radius damage area. Most infantry and skirmisher weapons have an area radius damage of 75, cavalry weapons may be 100, and artillery can be as high as 150. Therefore, your unit doesn't need to be the direct target to be affected. This is what you would call being in the wrong place at the wrong time, when one of your officers is hit by a stray bullet that was intended for somebody else. Additionally, it doesn't matter how much damage is taken over the 1 hit point threshold, nor how many different units are dealing the damage. If 3 units all fire at the exact same time, it is still 1 check per frame. Now, if 3 units are targeting you, and they all fire at different times, there'll be more checks because each volley will be within a different frame. Each point in medicine reduces the chance of being wounded by 0.001. If an officer is wounded, there's then a second check to see if the officer is killed. The default is still 10%, but each point in medicine reduces those odds of being killed by 0.01. I want you to understand that every time your unit takes damage, there's a chance of losing one of your officers. It could be the brigade officer or the division commander. Although corps command units can be destroyed in a battle, your corps commanders cannot be killed. Their command units will be reformed in camp after the battle. Melee units, especially if you charge often, tend to lose more officers because melee engagements last longer than volleys of shooting engagements. Even an exhausted and routing AI unit will do some minimal damage. It is much easier to preserve officers in your accuracy-based units because good unit placement can help minimize the frequency of damage that they take. Officers will get wounded, and streaks of bad luck will happen. However, if your losses seem excessive, you may want to take a step back and analyze your tactics. Why was the unit taking damage? Why was it in that location? Why didn't I move it once it started taking damage? Was the unit taking rifled artillery fire and I didn't notice it? Did the unit have good cover? If not, why? Do not stand out in the open going toe-to-toe exchanging fire with AI units unless it's a last resort and you have no other choice. And please don't be like Kevin Costner's character at the beginning of Dances with Wolves, riding your horse in front of the enemy to see if anybody can shoot well enough to kill you. It's just not a good idea. Self-assessment of your own tactics in battle can be a great learning experience. You don't need to be a YouTube content creator to use free software like OBS or NVIDIA's to record your gameplay and go back and look what happened. In closing, you should now understand why investing in medicine is a good idea for the long-term success of your army. In the next video, I will discuss training. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time watching today. I hope you found something useful for your campaigns, and I wish you much success, generals.